I believe the ceiling of LSU football is limited under head coach Brian Kelly. Now, when he first got to Baton Rouge, he exceeded a lot of expectations. They won 10 games. Most of us thought that his first season at LSU was going to be a rebuild. And, things started out a little bit slow year one for Brian Kelly. They lost to LSU due to a special teams mishap. They got curb stomped at home by Tennessee 40-13. But then, during the middle portion of the season, they really got hot. Remember, they had that stretch when they beat Ole Miss and they upset Alabama in overtime. And then they make it to the SEC championship. And yes, they did lose to Georgia. Jaden Daniels got injured in that game. But overall, they massively overachieved year one under Brian Kelly. So going into year two, around this time last year, do you remember when a lot of people in the college football media were picking LSU to win the SEC West last year? Because remember, they told us that LSU beating Alabama was the sign that it was a changing of the guard in the SEC, and many people didn't think Alabama was going to be good because of their offensive line and quarterback woes. And then, LSU gets into the season and they start off on a sour note, losing by multiple possessions to Florida State. Then they lose in a shootout to Ole Miss, which is a game that could have went either way. And then you beat Mizzou, and then you lose to Bama 42-28. And that's when, I felt things kind of were a little bit of a letdown for Brian Kelly, because you beat LSU at home. Well, you beat Alabama at home last year, and you're thinking with Alabama's quarterback situation and them not really being all that potent on offense that you really have a good chance at being able to win that game with how good Jaden Daniels played last season. And how often do you see a team with the Heisman Trophy winner and 2 first-round caliber wide receivers with a pretty decent offensive line not only miss out on the conference championship game, but entirely miss the playoffs altogether? You don't really see it all that often. And my problem with Brian Kelly and why I don't have a lot of confidence he's going to win a national championship at LSU is because this dude is always making excuses. Remember, the biggest reason why he left Notre Dame was because although he was getting them to the college football playoffs, he didn't have the necessary blue chip talent to be able to take down the Clemson or Alabama in the first round. Remember, the Fighting Irish would get into the postseason and they would get sent right back to Cancun right as soon as they got there because they didn't have the talent according to Brian Kelly. He couldn't get the kind of caliber of recruits needed to take down a school of Alabama or Georgia's caliber, right? But then Marcus Freeman replaces Brian Kelly, and he's recruiting at a way higher level than what Brian Kelly ever did for the Fighting Irish. And Brian Kelly has done a really good job recruiting at LSU, but he makes it seem as if, some of the guys that he misses out on is because LSU is unwilling to pay players. And it really irks me how dishonest this dude can be at times. And when he first got the LSU job, remember he had the whole incident where he got backlash for trying to fake having a Louisiana accent. And I kind of ignored those things and I gave him the benefit of a doubt. But after what happened last season and the excuses that he kind of continues to make, remember he wanted that Dominic Williams dude, that TCU defensive tackle, and when he didn't get him, he tried to play it off and say, man, we're not in the business of trying to pay everybody. We still want guys who want to be here. Stop the BS, man. You got the #1 quarterback recruit for this year's recruiting cycle, and I'm pretty confident that you paid that dude, bro. It's legal to pay these players now. There's no shame in playing for the best players. But just don't try to make it seem like, you're trying to go about things in a humble way and you're trying to make sure that you get guys that really want to come to LSU, because a lot of the transfers that LSU got from their big, massive transfer haul last year didn't really pan out, and a good amount of those guys are no longer with the program. And I get that LSU isn't the only school that's losing a lot of transfers to other schools that they brought in from the portal, but the development of those portal guys wasn't as good as what it needed to be. And that's why LSU still has big concerns on defense. Now, they bring in the all-star coaching staff. You got Bo Davis as your defensive line coach. You got an all-star studded defensive coaching staff now, but you still don't have the necessary talent needed to maximize making that big of an overhaul to your coaching staff. You're still going to have a good amount of defensive struggles. Is your defense going to be better this season than what it was last season? It will be, but not good enough for LSU to compete for the SEC championship this year. And it goes back to that last portal cycle. They brought in all those guys on defense, and none of them were able to pan out and improve your defense at all. And now you're still lacking not only the necessary talent up front of your defensive line, but also depth on the defensive line. And what the hell happened to Harold Perkins? This dude was arguably the best defensive player in college football, and all of a sudden, we kind of forgotten how good he is. And I get that Rome wasn't built overnight, but at a school like LSU, it shouldn't take this long for you to turn this team into a contender, especially with how well things went for you year one out the gate. And that's why I never really bought the LSU hype last year. And I just go back to looking at what happened at Notre Dame and him complaining about how he didn't have the necessary athletes needed to take down the Alabama. But meanwhile, I look at a guy like Kalen DeBoer, who in only 2 seasons at Washington took them to multiple 10-win seasons, a Pac-12 championship, a college football playoff appearance, and a national championship. And I'm looking at Kalen DeBoer, and I'm like, bro, like, if you can do this at Washington with inferior talent and not really having the same access to resources as a school like Texas does, why couldn't Brian Kelly do the same thing at Notre Dame? Let me ask you guys a question, and I want y'all to be truthfully honest with me about it. If Kalen DeBoer was coaching at Notre Dame instead of Brian Kelly, do you think Notre Dame would have continued to come up short in the first round of the playoffs? Because it's not like Notre Dame didn't have good offensive lines and good defensive lines. Like, they steady putting offensive linemen in the NFL, and Notre Dame offensive linemen are always viewed in high regard, and it's not like they didn't have any talent at all. You see, if Marcus Freeman can come in at Notre Dame right off the bat and bring in top 10, top 15 recruiting classes and bring in the kind of athletes that you struggle to recruit, I kind of look at you with a little bit of The Rock's eyebrow. And then you get the LSU, you're bringing in all this talent in the transfer portal, but yet none of these guys worked out on defense. You see, when Brian Kelly was at LSU, he was a big fish in the small pond. But now in the SEC, he's a big fish in the ocean swimming with sharks, with guys like Lane Kiffin, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart, and Josh Heupel. These head coaches are just as good, or if not better, than what Brian Kelly is. And the more I think about Brian Kelly and how the past 2 years have gone at LSU, the more I start to believe that this dude's stock is highly inflated and he's just a tad bit overrated. Now, I'm not saying that LSU is never going to win the SEC and they're never going to make it to the playoffs, because I believe that they can. I just don't think that they're ever going to win a national championship with Brian Kelly. And I heard Greg McElroy give Brian Kelly a 50% chance to win a natty at LSU. I give him a 0% chance. I might be nice and give him a 0.001% chance, but I don't see him being able to take down Texas. I don't even see him being able to get past Kirby Smart or Georgia. Kirby Smart is just a different breed. You know, he was able to take down Nick Saban at home, but we saw how that shit went last season. You can blame it on Jaden Daniels getting injured, but even if he was healthy, Alabama was still going to win that game. I just don't see the juice with Brian Kelly. You know, with all of the resources that he has at LSU, you would think that he would be able to win a national championship, but it's the fact that there are other coaches who have taken the same situation that Brian Kelly has been in at Notre Dame and done more with it. And I tend to favor coaches who can do more with less. Like, Lane Kiffin doesn't have nowhere close to the resources that Brian Kelly has access to at Ole Miss. But Ole Miss is expected to be a contender for the national championship this year. Did it take him a little bit of time to build that at Ole Miss? Yes, but you look at the level that the Rebels are at under the Lane train, and I'm just looking at LSU kind of somewhat being stagnant. It's like, we got to stop acting like the media wasn't trying to crown LSU the new kings of the SEC West last year. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, people's expectations have been so high the last 2 years for Brian Kelly, and all of a sudden, we should recalibrate them. We should just go back on, what predictions were last year, because you had the Heisman Trophy winner. You had 2 first-round wide receivers, and the most you could do is win 10 games? You couldn't even beat Alabama. You had a better offensive team than what Alabama did. Hell, you had a better overall team, in my opinion, than what Alabama did. But you want to know what the difference was between Alabama and LSU last year? The coaching. You put Nick Saban on those Brian Kelly Notre Dame teams instead of him. Do you think they continue to come up short in the college football playoffs? There's something that makes great coaches great coaches. And normally the coaches that you can find that are good are ones that can do more with less. But the guys who constantly need more and more and more and more to win, I just can't have confidence in you being able to win a natty when you're in the conference with most of college football's best coaches. Everybody has a stacked team in the SEC. Everybody can pretty much damn near buy a team now. I just don't see LSU going anywhere further than maybe making it to a national championship, but I can't see them winning. I just don't think that Brian Kelly has it in his blood to be a national championship winning coach. I just don't see it. This man made it to the national championship in 2012 and got absolutely slaughtered by Alabama that year. And I get that that was an all-time great Alabama team, but it's just so many times I've seen Brian Kelly get into these big games and come up empty. And last season, it's like that was your best opportunity to win the SEC West. You were going up against a down Alabama team and the SEC West that Ole Miss ended up being better than you. Ole Miss just had their first 11-win season in program history. Lane Kiffin's doing more with less. Meanwhile, Brian Kelly continues to make more excuses, having superior resources than the majority of other coaches in the sport. Kellen DeBoer in 2 seasons transformed Washington's program and did more than any head coach has done there in the past 2-3 decades, man. Even Chris Peterson didn't have the amount of success that Kellen DeBoer had, and he was at Washington for a pretty damn long time. With Kellen DeBoer being in this conference, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart, I just don't see LSU making it to a national championship win. I just don't see it. And you can say that maybe I'm writing off Brian Kelly a little bit too early, but, I'm just somebody who goes off your track record. And based off Brian Kelly's track record, I just don't see any reason to give him the benefit of a doubt that he will. He is a good coach. I'm not taking that away from him, but you can be a good coach and still not be good enough to win a national championship. We've seen it plenty of times. You mean to tell me that if you had the opportunity, LSU fans, to pick between Brian Kelly or Kellen DeBoer, you're taking Brian Kelly over Kellen DeBoer, a guy who just went to the national championship, not having a top 10 roster or a top 10 recruiting class? As a matter of fact, the dude wasn't even able to get none of his recruiting classes on the field to really make a big impact. He inherited what Jimmy Lake was unable to win with. You can call me a hater and say that I may be counting out Brian Kelly too soon, but I just don't see any reason to buy any stock to him winning a natty with the Tigers down in Baton Rouge. And I like LSU. And I kind of miss Ed Orgeron. I miss him saying, "Go Tigers." You feel me? It seems like he was a better culture fit for LSU than what Brian Kelly is. And college football isn't just about how good of a coach you are. It also has now become if you're a good culture fit for where you're at. And I don't think that Brian Kelly is a great culture fit for LSU. Like, when you gotta fake your accent just to fit in, I just kind of view you as a little bit fraudulent. I kind of view you as a fraud. And, I kind of think that LSU kind of has peaked already under Brian Kelly. Just a tad bit. Now, at most, they probably end up winning 11 games, and they may win an SEC championship or two, but I promise you, they probably would never win a natty under Brian Kelly. And I'm really confident in that. And I'm willing to bet money on that. I'm willing to bet over the next 3 to 4 years, LSU does not win a national championship. And I'm just wondering, how long does it truly take for Brian Kelly to win out of school at LSU with superior resources than what he claimed he never had at Notre Dame? Imagine if Notre Dame makes it to the college football playoffs this year and they win a playoff game. But LSU, either they miss the playoffs or they end up getting sent home in the first round. How bad of a look is that going to look on Brian Kelly? I'm just saying there are plenty of other coaches that are doing more with less. But yet Brian Kelly, you know, he didn't get the TCU kid. Oh, well, we weren't really to spend so much. What do you mean you're not willing to spend so much? Did you use all the NIL money that you had on guys that didn't work out? You only brought in 7 transfers. I mean, come on. You mean to tell me that those pockets ain't deep enough to get a dude like Dominic Williams? You mean to tell me that Dominic Williams rather play for Oklahoma than LSU when LSU is a way bigger brand than Oklahoma? No disrespect to my Sooner fan base out there, but let's just be honest, bro. When you think of LSU versus Oklahoma and who has the bigger brand recognition, it's LSU. I just don't see it with Brian Kelly. I get why some people don't want to write him off, but I think about how people just tried to say that LSU is going to be the new kings of the West over Nick Saban, and I still got a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Kalen DeBoer is about to coach circles around Brian Kelly. I'll go as far as to say that I don't even think he'll be able to beat Alabama as long as Kalen DeBoer is the head coach this year. Or the head coach of the future. As long as Kalen DeBoer stays at Alabama, which he probably is going to be there for a lifetime, I don't see Brian Kelly getting too many wins over him, man. Kalen DeBoer is a stud. Steve Sarkisian is a stud. It took Steve Sarkisian a while to get it together, but he finally has his foot underneath him down in Austin. Even Lane Kiffin. It's just that SEC is so much different now than what it was a couple of years ago because all of the best coaches damn near in the sport are in this conference. Brian Kelly isn't the only good coach here. You mean to tell me that you don't think Texas has better than a 50% chance to win a national championship? There are like 4 programs right now that I think have a way better chance at winning a national championship than what LSU does with Brian Kelly. I'm going to name them. Kirby Smart is going to get another one. Texas probably could get one. Alabama definitely could win one with Kalen DeBoer. And even Ole Miss, with how big of a juggernaut they've become. Hell, I'll even put Tennessee over LSU. I may be sounding like a Brian Kelly hater, but I really just don't see the juice with this guy anymore, bro. I really don't.